Hare Krishna, my Dandavat pranams to everybody. Hari Bol, Hari Bol. So this is the day after our wonderful celebration of Radhastami, following our celebration of Lalita Astami. And today we'll come back to our original topic of scrolling through the Gits, the 5 Gits in the Bhagavatam, these 5 exhibitions of the gopis' hearts in their feelings of separation from Krishna. These Gits are all about separation moods. We've covered already Venu Gita to some degree. I'm just basically trying to open the door for our interest to come into these very esoteric, beautiful chapters of the 10th canto. So today we're coming back to our Pranaya Gita, and this will be our 4th class on this Pranaya Gita. So we'll have a kirtan, and then we'll go into reading Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary on this remarkable topic. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Aradhikaya Priyatmane Shri Srimad Bhakti Vedanta Narayaniti Namine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shonyavari Paschatya Dishatharine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Gaura Prasthaya Bhutale Shri Srimad Bhakti Pragyana Keshaviti Namine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Iti Namine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Oh Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Oh Hari Bol Hari Bol Gaura Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol, Gaura Hari Bol. Jaya Nityananda Rai, Jaya Nityananda Rai, Nityananda Rai, Jaya Nityananda Rai, Jaya Nityananda Rai, Jaya Nityananda Rai, Nityananda Rai, Jaya Nityananda Rai, Jaya Sachinandan, Jaya Gaura Hari, Sachinandan, Jaya Gaura Hari, Jaya Sachinandan, Jaya Gaura Hari, Sachinandan, Jaya Gaura Hari, Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Radhe, Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Shri Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Shri Radhe, 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 Radhe. Jai Shri Shri Guru Garanga Ganhavika Giridhare Radha Madhav Ju Ki Jai Vrishabhanu Nandini Vajeshwari Radharani Ki Jai Nityananda Rai Ki Jai Sachinandana Gauda Hari Ki Jai Jai Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Astotar Shishimad Srila Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai Jai Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Astotar Shishimad Srila Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Asto Tarasara Shishimad Srila Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai Jai Jagat Guru Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Asto Tarasara Shishimad Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Paramahamsa Mahabhagavat Srila Gaura Kishodas Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai Jai Saptam Goswami Srila Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur Ki Jai Jai Vaishnav Savabhoma Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai Jai Srila Baladevi Dibhushan Gaudi Varantaracharya Ki Jai Jai Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur Ki Jai Jai Narottam Srinivas Shyamanand Prabhu Treya Ki Jai Srila Krishna's Kaviraj Goswami Ki Jai Shri Rup Sanatan Shivata Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopal Varadasa Raghunath Sat Goswami Prabhu's Ki Jai Arupa Nuga Guru Varga Ki Jai Jai Swarup Damodar Rai Ramananda Gauda Parsad Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Siga Hosi Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Shri Gauda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Antadvip Mayapur Simantadvip Gautram Dvip Madhya Dvip Koladvip Ritu Dvip Janu Dvip Maudam Dvip Rududvip Apmakandava Dvip Dham Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopiko Govardhan Dvarasa Vardmatmika Shri Braja Mandal Ki Jai Shri Radha Kun, Shama Kun, Ganga Jamuna Devi, Bhakti Devi, Tulsi Devi Ki Jai Shrimati Brinda Devi Maharani Ki Jai Shrimati Yogamaya Purnamasi Devi Maharani Ki Jai Shri Gopeshwar Mahadev Ki Jai Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Sudarshan Chakra Ki Jai Ketra Mandal Ki Jai Sarava Vignavanasa Karishina Shingadev Bhagavan Ki Jai Bhakta Prabha Shri Prahlad Maharaj Ki Jai Charidam Ki Jai Chari Sampradaya Ki Jai Charyachari Ki Jai Akaramat Raj Shri Chaitanya Mat Ki Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai Ananta Gauda Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Samagat Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bol Amagina Timirandasya Gyananjala Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Gurave Gaurachandraya Radhikaya Tadalaya Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tarabhaktaya Namo Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Shtapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kathamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Anapita Chirim Chirat Kurunavartino Kalo Samarpaitam Unnata Ujvala Rasam Swabhakti Shriyam Hari Purata Sundara Dutikatamba Satipita Sada Hridare Kandare Svagatu Vasachinandanaha Priya Surupe Daita Surupe Prema Surupe Sahaja Gurupe
Nijana Rupe Prabhu Eka Rupe Tatana Rupe Swavilasa Rupe Yam Prabhajantam Anapetyam Apeti Krityam Dvaipaino Viraha Katara Ajuhava Putre Titam Mayatayo Tarava Vinidustam Sarvabhutam Hridem Munimanatoshmi Bhaktya Vihina Aparada Lakshay Shiptascha Karmadi Tarangamadye Kripa Maitvam Sharanam Prapana Prinde Namaste Charanarabindam Pajami Radam Aravindanetram Smarami Radam Madhurashmitasyam Vadami Radam Karuna Bharadram Tato Mamanasti Katina Kapi Tavaivasmi Najivami Tvaivina Iti Vignaya Radhe Tvam Naimam Charanantikam.
I'm first of all offering millions and millions of Dandavat pranams unto the lotus feet of my most beloved Gurudev, Nitya Lila Pravishta Om, Asto Tarazara Shishimat, Srila Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. And I'm offering the same again unto our dear most Nitya Lila Pravishta Om, Asto Tarazara Shishimat, Srila Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. And today I'm offering special Dandavats unto the lotus feet of our dear most Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, who is giving us these commentaries on the 10th canto that we're reading, and to all our illustrious Rupanuga Guru Varga and all the Vaishnava and Vaishnavi devotees of the Lord, my Dandavat pranams to all of you. Vanshakalpa tarubhyascha kripa sindhavyevacha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavena namaha. So now, as I said earlier, we're coming back to our previous topic of going through the different Gits. So we've covered Venu Gita, and we understand this sequence of the Bhagavatam, the harmony, the symphony of the Bhagavatam, how it's rolled through the first 9 cantos, giving us Sambandha Gyan, giving us a relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, with that majestic, reverential personality, Lord Narayan, principally, because most of the pastimes are connecting with, like Dhruva Maharaj, he connects with Lord Narayan. Jad Bharat, he also connects with Lord Narayan in Vaikuntha. So that's the principal focus and description of the path to come into this kunj, we can say, of the 10th canto. The 10th canto is the Prayojan. So in the 10th canto, there are 90 chapters. So we enter the 10th canto after we've digested and carefully examined and read the first 9 cantos. Then we have the Adhikar. Then we can become somewhat fearless, because these places we're going to are very confidential places. If you're going into a confidential place, you have to have some mood of fearlessness. So we come into the 10th canto, and first of all it's Mathura, the story of Krishna's manifesting in Mathura, and then his birth in Gokul, in Braj, then his Balya Lila, his childhood pastimes, then his Poganda Lila, his from the age of 6 till the age of 8 or 9, this Poganda age. And then in the 20th chapter, as we've often described, we come to the beautiful rainy season chapter, the 20th, which is like a curtain opening into the realm of the 10th canto, the Rasa Tattva section from chapter 21. So chapter 20 is like a break, so to speak, cleansing all the area of Vrindavan, cleansing our hearts for walking into the 21st chapter, which is Venu Gita. So we went through Venu Gita, describing the gopis Purvarag, and they're sitting together in their homes, and they're sharing with each other this beautiful verse, Harapita Natavarabapur Karaniyo Karanikaram. And another one is Akshan Vatam Phalam Idam Naparamam Vidama. These beautiful verses are being described there, describing the beauty of Krishna and Balaram, as they enter the forests. So the gopis, this is the first time in the Bhagavatam that we're actually coming into the hearts of these greatest devotees of Lord Krishna. Our path is to follow the devotees in Anugatya, those that will please the Supreme Lord the most. We want to, the energy, the channel for devotion is to focus on the Lord and to consider how we can bring Him pleasure. So yesterday we were discussing, of course, Srimati Radhika, and how Sri Radhika, she is the repository of pleasure pastimes for Krishna. And if we take shelter of Sri Radhika, then most assuredly Krishna is going to hear our prayer. Krishna is going to become connecting with us much more significantly through the mercy of Sri Radhika. So this is what we were discussing yesterday. All of these confidential pastimes about the gopis, about their pastimes with Krishna, this is the Leela that's going to melt the heart. The heart has become hardened due to its association with matter. We've associated our bodies as being ourselves. In Jaiva Dharma, this is called nishag, this acquired nature, just like the ice block thinks it's hard, but its real nature is liquid. So we also are thinking that we're material, but this is not our real self. So when these currents of sweet pastimes start to enter the ears, then gradually that hardness in the heart will begin to melt. So we begin with our Venu Gita and how the gopis are seeing even inanimate objects like clouds as having personalities, showering their beloved Krishna with raindrops and giving him shade in the heat of the sun. And the gopis are feeling in their hearts, because it's very much about the feeling mood now. We're coming out of the office of the mind, so to speak, and we're coming into the garden of the heart, which is about feelings, mood, bhav. So they're expressing their bhav of envy, and it's called rishya. It's bhav of becoming envious that the cows can come so close to Krishna. They can't. They're restricted in their homes with their elders and superiors around them. They can't get out of their homes at this point in time. This is about the time of Prata Lila. This is about 10:30 before Krishna goes to Radha Kund for the Madhyana Lila. And they're seeing Krishna in their meditation. They're sharing with each other. They can't live without talking about Krishna, without thinking about Krishna. All of them together, sitting in different groups. So this Venu Gita we discussed. And now we've come to chapter 29, which heralds the beginning of the Ras Leela. And there's a very beautiful description of the Sarad Purnima. This full moon is rising, and Krishna is feeling inspired by the nature of the rising of that full moon, anointing the face of the western horizon, who's actually represents the wife of Lord Indra. And Chandra is associating with her, in a sense, performing a parakiya act. So Krishna is in this Chandra bumps. He's in this Chandra dynasty. So he's getting inspiration from seeing the moon, anointing the sky with the kumkum, as a lover would anoint his lover, his beloved. So Krishna becomes inspired by this, and he plays a most beautiful melody on his flute, which travels through all objects to reach the ears of those particular gopis that he's calling to come to the forest to dance with him. And this is a very, very inspiring pastime. This is like the pinnacle This is like the beginning. It's heralding the beginning of Krishna's crest jewel of all pastimes, which is the Rasa Leela. And this Rasa Leela is going to melt the hearts. It's described Anugrahaya Bhaktanam Manusyam Deha Ashrita Bhajate Tadrishi Kritva Yashrutva Tatparobhavat. It's saying Krishna advents Manusyam in the human-like form to encourage, inspire the conditioned souls to hear about his pastimes. By hearing Shravanam, and then by speaking Kirtan, then Smaranam will eventuate. And that Smaranam is the very internal place that we're looking to develop during our meditation, our remembrance of Krishna's divine pastimes. So Krishna plays his flute, and the gopis all individually hear the sound vibration, and we've described previously how the gopis, they had fallen in love with Krishna a number of years before, and it had gradually been evolving, that attraction and affection to Krishna. They are Krishna's Shaktis ultimately, so they've always been connected to Krishna in sweetness and Madhurya Ras, always. But that was ignited, principally we described the other day, by the Kalya Naga pastime. When Krishna was dancing on the hoods of Kalya, then he was indicating to the gopis at that time, we will dance like this in the coming nights of this autumn season. We will dance like this. So Krishna was sending all these eye messages to the gopis. So the gopis were coming more and more inspired towards his wanting to be with him and enjoying with him. So they had reached a pitch of intensity after the Venugit, which is Purvarag, which means a mood of anticipation. This is the first type of separation that is described, Purvarag, anticipation. So this anticipation had reached its height, its zenith. And when they heard the flute song, they dropped absolutely everything. Krishna had entered through their ears into their hearts and was calling them into the forest. And the examples, how they behaved, is so inspiring for the devotees, because this is what true Sharanagat is. They absolutely dropped everything they were doing in consideration of coming to the forest to pacify Krishna's calm, to support him. They weren't running to the forest for their own pleasure. They weren't thinking, oh, now I'm going to get pleasure in the moonlight with this Lord of my life. They weren't thinking like that. They were thinking, Krishna is calling us, is calling me. Very clearly it's described that each gopi ran alone. They didn't run in groups. I've mentioned this point many times because it's important to appreciate for the conditioned souls in this Kali Yuga that we don't come to Krishna in a group necessarily. We come individually when we find that channel of devotion internally, alone. Then we can share with others once we have found that place of devotion. But the gopis each ran alone. This shows their courage to face the darkness of the forest alone. They weren't holding each other's hands or anything like that, giving each other's confidence. They just ran with the firm conviction that I will die unless I can quickly come to the lotus feet of Krishna and serve his calm. This is the point we have to appreciate. And in doing that, there's a number of verses which describe how they left everything. They left their fathers, they left their sons, their family relatives, they left their duties of milking the cows, they left their cakes burning in the ovens, they left children, they just ran. They gave up all their dharma, all their chastity, all their shyness. They gave everything up, totally. Young girls. and ran into the forest to satisfy Krishna's come. And when they arrived there, they found that there was millions of other gopis there. So they hadn't necessarily anticipated that. They weren't running thinking there's going to be a crowd of my friends there or anything like that. They just ran. But when they came, after giving up all this beautiful Pranaya Gita begins to unfold. The Pranaya Gita is actually in 10 verses in this chapter 29. It starts from about verse 29 and it runs through until verse 37, 38, like that. It's approximately 10 verses. And Krishna, initially, he is apparently, with one voice, rejecting the gopis. He's saying, oh my dear gopis, swagatam, swagatam, now you welcome, welcome. You're appreciating the beauty of the Vrindavan forest, but now you should go home, back to your husbands. This mortified the hearts of the gopis. They could not even tolerate the thought of going back. They had cut all their ties with their families. Simultaneously, we're appreciating how Yogamaya instantly manifested replica gopis in their homes. So there was no disturbance for them. The gopis, of course, didn't know that. But this is how Yogamaya, who is Sri Radhika, arranged that. That practically instantly when the gopis ran away, they were replaced with a replica. So that no one felt any animosity or anything like that towards Krishna. That wouldn't have been conducive for the Ras Leela to have taken place. So these replica gopis immediately manifested and covered for them all, so to speak. But the gopis didn't know that, but they had been sent back by Krishna. Now we know that Krishna is very tricky and duplicitous, and the gopis also know that. They've been joking with him for many years. They know that. They know that Krishna is saying one thing, but actually in his mind, he's thinking something else. So the gopis were appreciating this double talk, so to speak. But as we said previously, they could only act on the external words that Krishna was saying. And Krishna was saying externally, go home. That's what he was saying. To return to your homes, your fathers, your family members, they're all missing you, they will be disturbed. And saying this in a strong way, and then the gopis became mortified hearing this. They felt that their praying for Krishna was not sufficient. Krishna is talking to us like this. Perhaps he doesn't mean it. We're not sure. They couldn't. I mean, when you hear the subtle and the gross, you accept the gross, and the subtle is more on the fringes. You don't accept the subtle with so much conviction as you accept the gross. So they had to acknowledge the gross words, the first understanding that they were interpreting from Krishna's words. And then they felt so much anguished that they were scratching the earth, it's described, with their toes, praying to Bhumi Devi, Prithivi, to enter the earth, commit suicide, in other words. It's described as vantasi, to go back and eat your own vomit. That's what it would have been like for the gopis to go back to their husbands. It was completely, they just couldn't begin to think about doing that. They would rather die. So this is a mood of like life and death for the gopis. So it brings to an intensity there in the mood that we're appreciating here. And then, unlike the previous pastime of the Brahmani wives, who are sent back also, I just got to shut this door for a minute. The door doesn't shut properly. And we're having a storm coming. So it keeps banging. So unlike the Brahmani wives, they accepted Krishna's words to return, and they returned. So again, it's showing by comparisons how the gopis were not like that. They were resolute in their nishta, in their attraction, in their absolute affection for Krishna. They knew that Krishna wanted their association. This is what they had understood. This is what my Gurudev speaks many times. That the gopis, they understood what is Krishna's desires. Krishna desires us. We are for Krishna only. And there's some very beautiful verses I'd like to share today from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, describing exactly what I'm talking about. This is from the Adi Leela chapter 4. Adi Leela chapter 4, that Krishna is glorifying the gopis. This is when he returns. Let me see. It's defining love and lust in verse 164 of Adi Leela. It says, love and lust have different characteristics, just as iron and gold have different natures. The desire to gratify one's own senses is calm, lust, but the desire to please the senses of Lord Krishna is prem. The gopis had this prem, not lust. The object of lust is only the enjoyment of one's own senses, but love caters to the enjoyment of Lord Krishna, and thus it is very powerful. So this is the potency of the gopis' prem. And Krishna is speaking to them at another time. He says, social customs, scriptural injunctions, bodily demands, fruit of action, shyness, patience, bodily pleasures, sense gratification, and the path of Varnashram Dharma, which are difficult to give up. The gopis have forsaken all of these, as well as their own relatives, their punishment and scolding, for the sake of serving Krishna. They render loving service to him for the sake of his enjoyment. So the devotee has to be really clear on this, because we as conditioned souls are filled with calm and lust and the desires to enjoy our senses, rather than utilizing our lives completely in the service of the Lord. So we're following in the footsteps of these gopis. And then saying, therefore, lust and love are quite different. Lust is like dense darkness, but love is like the bright sun. There is not the slightest taint of lust in the gopis' love. Their relationship with Krishna is only for the sake of his enjoyment. We have to read these things many times, I think, to really get because it contradicts our own conditioned natures from birth. From birth, we go to school, etc. We're trained to be competitive in the world. We're trained to exploit this material energy. We're trained to make money so that we can have more sense gratification, etc. We're schooled in this way. It's a whole hypnosis by the material energy, material nature. So coming into this Krishna consciousness, we have so much philosophical clear directions from the Bhagavad Gita and from the initial chapters in the Bhagavatam of how to surmount this material energy. But then where do we go from there? This is the point. Once we've surmounted this material attraction, if we just leave it there, that'll be called liberation. So that's not our path. Our path is most definitely the path of devotion. Srila Bhakti Rakshak Maharaj once coined the expression, there is sense gratification on one side and renunciation on the other side. They're two similar things, actually. If we just talk about renouncing everything, That's not the path of love. That's that tyagi mood. That's not the path of affection at all. Actually, it makes the heart hard. Hard if we endeavor in that direction like a yogi. That is not our path. Our path is to be, Bhakti Rakshak Maharaj describes the middle road of dedication, this devotion, dedication. So we have to know clearly who we are dedicated to. And that's why we love to describe these pastimes of the gopis. Because the gopis are the most dedicated. They're the most surrendered, submissive personalities in existence. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that this is the highest exhibition of love known to men, is the acts of the gopis. So it's described here. The gopis do not care for their own pleasure or pains. All their physical and mental activities are directed towards offering enjoyment to Lord Krishna. They renounced everything for Krishna, but they have pure attachment to giving Krishna pleasure. Krishna's Kaviraj is saying it repeatedly. O my beloved gopis, you have renounced social customs, scriptural injunctions, and your relatives for my sake. I disappeared behind you only to increase your concentration upon me. Since I disappeared for your benefit, you should not be displeased with me. This is what he says after the Pranaya Gita. But I'm trying to paint a description to the best of my understanding from the scriptures to bring us into the heart region of the gopis' moods at this time of the Pranaya Gita. And during this Pranaya Gita, the gopis throw at him. They say this, that Krishna has promised that he will reciprocate with his devotees. Lord Krishna has a promise from before to reciprocate with his devotees according to the way they worship him. Yayatamam prabhatyante tam stataiva brajamyaham. It's saying in Bhagavad Gita that Krishna will do like that. That promise has been broken by the worship of the gopis, as Lord Krishna himself admits. So Krishna wasn't reciprocating in the Pranaya Gita. And then the gopis are thinking, I have offered this body to Lord Krishna. He is its owner, and it brings him enjoyment. Krishna finds joy in seeing and touching this body. It is for this reason that they cleanse and decorate their bodies. O Arjuna, Krishna speaking again, there are no greater receptacles of deep love for me than the gopis, who cleanse and decorate their bodies because they consider them mine. This is from the Adi Purana. There is another wonderful feature of the emotions of the gopis. Its power is beyond the comprehension of intelligence. This is achintya. We might think it's very simple because we're familiar so much with the dealings between young boys and young girls. We've been through these romantic episodes in our lives. We've experienced this materially. But now we're coming to a spiritual appreciation with the same apparent dynamic that we might see in the material world. But it's not, how are we going to make this absolute necessary switch and understand the purity, this nirmala, this absolute immaculate behavior of the gopis, not like in this material world of exploitation. When the gopis see Lord Krishna, they derive unbounded bliss, although they have no desire for such pleasure. I have to shut that door again. Second. Hare Krishna. Krishna. Beautiful thunder. This is wonderful to appreciate. The gopis taste a pleasure 10 million times greater than the pleasure Lord Krishna derives from seeing them. They taste a pleasure, but that's not the purpose of their coming to Krishna. It'll be described. The gopis have no inclination for their own enjoyment, and yet their joy increases. That is indeed a contradiction. It's a contradiction, isn't it? They have no pleasure for their own enjoyment, and yet their own bliss increases by the power of service, by the power of seva. They simply want to, we've said so many times that seva is the symptom of love. They want to perform service completely with their bodies, with every part of themselves to Krishna's, and bring him satisfaction. For this contradiction, I see only one solution. The joy of the gopis lies in the joy of their beloved Krishna. So there's a very beautiful commentary here by Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada I'd like to read. Actually, if we start to become more inclined to hearing these types of topics about the gopis, about Vrindavan, about Braja Ras, about the gifts that Mahaprabhu has bestowed upon us, because this is what Mahaprabhu has come to, this Rag Mag Bhakti Loke. He's come to taste himself, prem, but he's come to give us this rag. So the gopis have no, desire for their own enjoyment. So now there's purport by Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The situation of the gopis is perplexing. They don't want their own happiness, and yet they become more happy than Krishna. The gopis is perplexing, for although they did not want personal happiness, it was imposed upon them. The solution to this perplexity is that Sri Krishna's sense of happiness is limited by the happiness of the gopis. When the gopis are happy, Krishna becomes happy. When the gopis are more happy, Krishna becomes more happy. Sometimes Krishna is happy when he's defeated by the gopis in dice game, or in water sports, or in so many different ways the gopis defeat Krishna. And Krishna is always very happy when the gopis defeat him. And of course the gopis themselves are completely satisfied and happy when they defeat Krishna, because Krishna is so extraordinarily potent and tricky in many, many ways. The solution to this perplexity is that Sri Krishna's sense of happiness is limited by the happiness of the gopis. Devotees at Vrindavan therefore try to serve the gopis, namely Radharani and her associates. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada is writing these purports. If one gains the favor of the gopis, he Krishna, because on the recommendation of the gopis, Krishna at once accepts the service of a devotee. We were saying yesterday Radhastami, and I gave that example that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati had said the difference between a non-Gaudiya performing Radha Kund Parikrama, worship to Radha Kund in the hope of getting Krishna's mercy, whereas the Gaudiyas, we offer service to Krishna knowing that we will get Radha's mercy by doing it. We are looking always for Radharani's mercy, because Radharani holds that key to the greatest service to Krishna, Aradhanam Sadhavesham. She's the repository of the highest sweetness towards Krishna, highest service towards Krishna. If one gains the favor of the gopis, one easily gains the favor of Krishna, because on the recommendation of the gopis, Krishna at once accepts the service of a devotee. I'll read it again. Because on the recommendation of the gopis, Krishna at once accepts the service of a devotee. If Radharani has our name in her register, then Krishna is going to be most inclined to support and nourish us in all different ways. Lord Chaitanya therefore wanted to please the gopis instead of Krishna, but his contemporaries misunderstood him, and for this reason Lord Chaitanya renounced the order of household life and became a sannyasi. Always hearing these topics alongside of topics of Mahaprabhu creates the balance to understand and enter this. I'm saying all this today because I haven't done a live stream yet on this Pranaya Gita. So I'm just filling in some background to what I've already churned over with the other devotees who have been listening to the previous classes that I've been, readings that we've been doing here. So I'm trying to create a very solid foundation of where we're going and how we're going to proceed. When Lord Krishna, this is verse 190, when Lord Krishna sees the gopis, his joy increases, and his unparalleled sweetness increases also. The gopis think, Krishna has obtained so much pleasure by seeing me. That thought increases the fullness and beauty of their faces and bodies. How beautiful, this reciprocal mood. The beauty of Lord Krishna increases at the sight of the beauty of the gopis, and the more the gopis see Lord Krishna's beauty, the more their beauty increases. So it's just escalating on both sides. This is from Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Lila. I'm just reading directly. In this way, a competition takes place between them, in which no one acknowledges defeat. So this is the situation. Krishna, however, derives pleasure from the beauty and good qualities of the gopis. And when the gopis see his pleasure, the joy of the gopis increases. This section, this Adi Lila chapter 4, is describing the internal reasons for Mahaprabhu's advent. Chapter 3 is the external reasons. This chapter, Adi Lila chapter 4, is so important for us to deeply immerse ourselves in. Therefore we find that the joy of the gopis nourishes the joy of Lord Krishna. For that reason, the fault of lust is not present in their love. Can we understand this? The fault of lust is not present in their relationship. They're not trying to satisfy themselves, and by that dynamic of not satisfying themselves, they become more satisfied. I'll read this purport again by Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. By looking at the beautiful gopis, Krishna becomes enlivened, and this enlivens the gopis, whose youthful faces and bodies blossom. This competition is increasing beauty between the gopis and Krishna, which is without limitations, is so delicate that sometimes mundane moralists mistake these dealings to be purely amorous. This is what we're trying to purify, any contamination in our consciousnesses as we walk into these Gits of the 10th canto, this selfishness. But these affairs are not at all mundane, because the gopis' intense desire to satisfy Krishna surcharges the entire scene with pure love of Godhead, with not a spot of sexual indulgence. Not a spot, not a drop. Again, I worship Lord Keshava coming back from the forest of Braj. He is worshipped by the gopis, who mount the roofs of their palaces and meet him on the path with 100 manners of dancing glances and gentle smiles. In Goduli, when Krishna returns with the cows and the raised grey clouds of dust, then the gopis are in the watchtowers. On many of the houses they have higher rooftop watchtowers, and they're looking from there and they're seeing. Actually, it's quite remarkable, just an interesting side point. When you read Vidagdha Madhav, you get many descriptions of how Lalita Saki or Vrinda Devi, they're seeing many miles away. Somehow they have this ability to see a long distance. So when they're standing in these towers, they know that Krishna can actually see them, and they can see him clearly. They can even see his eye movements from where they are. Krishna's coming on the royal path back into Braj, and they're witnessing and they're seeing his glances, they're receiving his sweet smiles. The corners of his eyes wander like large black bees around the gopis' breasts. This is the Supreme Lord, who doesn't have a blemish of lust in his heart. It's only one of purity and seva. There is another natural symptom of the gopis' love that shows it is without a trace of lust. The love of the gopis nourishes the sweetness of Lord Krishna. That sweetness in turn increases their love, for they are greatly satisfied. The happiness of the abode of love is in the happiness of the object of that love. The object of love is Krishna himself, and the abode of love for Krishna is the ashraya that's in the hearts of the gopis. This is not a relationship of desire for personal gratification. Whenever there is unselfish love, that is its style. The reservoir of love derives pleasure when the lovable object is pleased. When the pleasure of love interferes with the service of Lord Krishna, the devotees become angry towards such ecstasy. And we know the famous example of Daruka, when he's fanning Krishna. Ecstatic symptoms are coming in his body while he's doing such a nice service. And he's condemning these symptoms because it's interfering with his service. He's not looking for that ecstasy. He's looking to please Krishna, only one focused. Very high. Then it's got here, Sri Daruka. It's got that example. The lotus-eyed Radharani powerfully condemned the ecstatic love that caused a flow of tears that hindered her sight of Govinda. Furthermore, pure devotees never forsake the loving service of Lord Krishna to aspire for their own personal pleasure through 5 kinds of liberation. So it discusses very much that in the Adi Lila, chapter 4, and I finished on verse 204. So there are many descriptions there by Srila Krishna's Kaviraj, and he's giving us, there's one verse that I really wanted to read. The gopis experience millions of times pleasure more than Krishna. Even though they're not seeking this pleasure. So all these verses are very, very beautiful in this end of the chapter. I'll just read a little bit more of this actually, it's very beautiful. These are the characteristics of transcendental loving service to Purushottam, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is causeless and cannot be obstructed in any way. So if we, in this life, can catch up even a smell, a fragrance of the gopis praying for Krishna. My Gurudev gives us an interesting example. He was saying that once there was one devotee, he was very sick. He had, his digestion was completely finished. He couldn't even cope with drinking water. He would pass that out. And he went to they took him to an Ayurvedic doctor in Calcutta. And the doctor prescribed a spoonful of ghee every day. And the devotees were astonished. How can he drink ghee? He can't even digest water. And you're asking him to take a spoonful of ghee. How can this possibly help his stomach? And the doctor said, gradually, a little bit of that ghee will begin to stick on the stomach. And from that little bit, then the rest of his digestion will gradually begin to become strong again. This is exactly what happened. He took that ghee and initially he was passing everything out, but something remained. There was some smear of the ghee left in his stomach to begin to hold the foodstuffs again. So it's like this with our discussion of the gopis. we may not have such a fervent desire to hear about this or to follow in this such exemplary Sharanagat mood of the gopis, but the more we open ourselves out to hearing these descriptions, to reading Chaitanya Charitamrita, to reading the commentaries in the 10th canto, and we haven't even begun to read today. I was just laying something more of a foundation from where we've come from. Tomorrow we'll begin where we reached in the 3rd Pranaya Gita, and we'll start from page verse 39. Actually, I can read one, so that we will be on track with our Pranaya Gita. So when Krishna is sending the gopis home, they don't, and they resolutely stand, and when they find themselves again, because initially they're like puppets, it's described. They've been shattered, they've been smashed, they don't feel they're good enough for Krishna's prem. They feel lost, they're confused for some time, but then they regain their natural affection for Krishna. And then they start to challenge Krishna. And what's so remarkable about this Pranaya Gita is that they defeat Krishna. And Krishna likes to be defeated by his devotees, as we said previously. So we read verse 38 previously. Oh no, we'll read verse 38 now. This is verse 38 of the 29th chapter. I'll just read one verse and commentary and then we'll stop. Therefore, O vanquisher of all distress, please show us mercy. To approach your lotus feet, we abandon our families and homes, and we have no desire other than to serve you. So we've just unpacked that completely. Our hearts are burning with intense desires generated by your beautiful smiling glances. It was Krishna ignited this love within the hearts of the gopis. The love was already there in a dormant stage, but it was Krishna who set it on fire. It was his responsibility. O jewel among men, please make us your maidservants. They want to offer this submission to Krishna. Now, commentary by Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur. The Braja Gopis said, giving up our families, we desire to be your servants, like the devotees of Narayan. So often it's described, now this is a very interesting point, that the gopis, they never see Krishna as Lord Narayan. But it's described by Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur that in their deepest separation moods, they see him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, simultaneously as their dearest beloved. They see the entire complete picture of Krishna. Krishna as that beautiful cowherd boy, as well as Krishna as the Supreme Lord. And this is in Gopi Gita. This is also described. They're in separation in Gopi Gita. Remember, in Gopi Gita, we'll come to in the 31st chapter. This will be described. Next, after this Pranaya Gita, we'll go to Gopi Gita. So this verse, Nakala Gopika, Nandano Bhavan, Akila Dehinam, Antaratmadrik, Vikanashardito, Vishwagoptaye, Saka Udayivam, Satvatam Kule. This is the translation. O friend, you are certainly not only the son of Yashoda. Again, they're seeing Krishna as Supreme Lord in their separation. But the difference between this Gopi Gita and this Pranaya Gita is Krishna is not in front of them. In Pranaya Gita, Krishna is directly in front of them. And they're in their separation because they're feeling separation and union with Krishna at the same time. Krishna is there directly, physically in front of them, but they're feeling impending separation because he sent them home. Understand? So it's both. And this translation of this Gopi Gita, O friend, you are certainly not only the son of Yashoda, you are also the super soul who resides in the heart of all living beings. In response to the prayer of Lord Brahma, you have descended in the Yadav dynasty in order to protect the universe. So this is completely seeing Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, this verse that the gopis are chanting in Gopi Gita. But they're also referencing Krishna here as that Supreme Soul, that Supreme Person. The Braja Gopi said, yes, giving up all the time, you are similar to Narayan. You should be pleased with us. Krishna responds, but you girls have some bad karma which causes suffering and stands in the way of my favoring you. Therefore, how can you receive my mercy? Does Lord Narayan grant his mercy to just anyone? The Braj Gopis respond, O one who vanquishes distress, Rijinadana, please remove our suffering. It is well known in the scriptures that Narayan takes away the suffering of those who take shelter of him. Similarly, without any ulterior desire, we have renounced our homes. They have no ulterior desire to take shelter of your lotus feet. Krishna speaks. We surmise that you must be expecting some pleasure from me in exchange for abandoning the happiness of your family life. Quite natural. If you give up something, you only give up something because you think you're going to get something better. Param dritra nivartante. Even Bhagavad Gita is saying like that. Give up the lower taste and then you can have the higher taste. But the gopis are not like that. They're not thinking that we're getting a higher pleasure. We're only thinking of how we can please Krishna. So much in love with Krishna. So much in love with Krishna. The gopis say, our aspiration is only to worship you, for your pleasure, not ours. The idea underlying the gopis' argument is as follows. If in the course of pleasing you, we circumstantially become happy by seeing your face, what is the fault in that? So we've described this today, that Krishna, from the pages of the Adi Lila, Krishna's, as his happiness on seeing them increases, his face blossoms, and when they see his happiness, their happiness increases. This is the dynamic, but it's all selfless. Krishna then says, then why are you gopis improperly asking me to extinguish the fire of your hearts? The Braja Gopis respond, this is not improper, it is the truth. You are the cause of that fire's flaring up. Our souls burn with intense desire created by your beautiful smiling glances. To remove that fault, you should simply grant us the position of your maidservants rather than the status of wives. Sripad Ballavacharya comments on this as follows. The gopis prayed for the position of maidservants, not Krishna's wives, because to be married, Krishna would need to have received the Upanaya Sanskar, Brahman thread, which he got later in Mathura Lila. So Krishna is not even initiated into that Brahman Sanskar, that Upanaya Sanskar. The Braj Gopis continued, thus there is no harm in our being unmarried maidens or being married to other men, for neither of these conditions preclude a relationship of servitude with you. Now Sanatana Goswami, he comments here, says in his commentary that service to the husband in married life does not give as much happiness as service to a paramour lover. Without understanding Parakiya Ras, Parakiya Bhav, we haven't understood the gift of Mahaprabhu. Mahaprabhu is giving us the stamp of approval to embrace the conception of Parakiya Bhav, which goes against all social conventional morals, etc. This Parakiya Bhav in the material world is abominable. But in the spiritual world, it is the highest consideration of ras with Krishna. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he gives a beautiful essay that we've discussed before, this raising the divine temple. And he talks about these 8 evolving stages in the Bhagavatam. And the first is Shamshaya, this doubtfulness is there in the Bhagavatam. And then Naistakya, this atheistic mentality. And then Nirgun, impersonal. mentality is there. And then kliva, neuter, without gender. These are conceptions that the practitioner can perceive in the Bhagavatam and in his own evolutionary growth that are described here. And then the Purush, now the Lord of all, is being described like Ram, Leela, etc. And then Mituna, the potent and the potency. Now Shakti is being introduced on the pages of the Bhagavatam. These are the 8 evolving stages of the Bhagavatam. And then Swakiya is introduced, being married to Krishna directly, that Supreme Personality of Godhead, who we've heard about in so many instances in the initial cantos of the Bhagavatam. And then finally it comes to Parakiya. This is the 8th stage of the evolution that the sadhak can go through with this, to come to this Parakiya stage. And finally, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati is saying, we must have more commentaries on Parakiya Ras. Parakiya Ras must be discussed more in the world. Because the more we discuss it, and the more we try to control our senses, of course, because controlling the senses is the first prerequisite to any type of spiritual engagement, is control of the senses. So in the lust area, that has to be dealt with. But these evolving stages, coming to Parakiya, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, is very much accentuating in this particular essay. The point is also corroborated, the happiness as service to a paramour lover. It gives much more happiness. This point is also corroborated in his Brihat Bhagavatamrita. Since being a servant is more desirable, the gopis pray in this verse, may we become your maidservants. The Braja Gopis say, because you are a vast ocean of desires, the proper worship of you, who are a woman hunter, by us young girls should be executed with our own bodies to bring you satisfaction. Consequently, our prayer to extinguish the fire in our hearts is actually a prayer to worship you. The fire of our lust is the chief instrument of that worship. So this lustful attraction to Krishna, this nature, is the impetus for their enthusiasm. Thus, it is fitting for the Braj Gopis to address Krishna with the phrase Purush Bhushana, O jewel among men. By this the Gopis meant to say, O jewel of all males, please decorate our golden bodies with the dark blue gems of your limbs. So that's the end of the commentary on the 38th verse. So there's another 2 or 3 verses which we'll go through tomorrow to conclude this Pranaya Gita. So I hope you've got something of value from this reading and discussion today about the height and speciality of the Gopis' praying, and it's free from lust entirely. Jai, Gopi Gita ki jai, Venu Gita ki jai, Pranaya Gita ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Anantakota Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Go Premanandi. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Gaura Hari Bol. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Gaura Hari Bol. Go Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol. Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha, Kripa Sindhabhevcha, Patitanam Bhavanavyo, Vaishnave Namo Namaha. Srila Gurudev ki jai, Rupanuga Guru Varga ki jai. Go Premanandi, Hari Bol.